Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel and the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel. This is the continuation of that process. This is also the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling Review series for the April 9th, 1983 edition. We kind of start with highlights of Slater and we start with Rotundo and Briscoe versus Roberts and Funk, kind of joined in progress. Obviously, Mike Rotundo has been a major force. Jack Briscoe coming in and being part of that, kind of cinching up on Jake Roberts is pretty aggressive. Also, the tandem of Jake Roberts and Dory Funk Jr. Dory Funk, of course, your Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion. Kind of a big deal as he is in there with Jack Briscoe. Briscoe, of course, the former NWA champion as well. Both guys wrestling around, jockeying for position. Hammerlocks go behind other basic maneuvers, trying to hold the motion as quick as possible here, and ultimately does some cinch ups. Jake Roberts eventually getting the control. Roberts and Rotundo, who later becomes IRS, just an interesting run. Jake Roberts also very casual with the clothing that he wears, short shots along the midsection, and again, Dory Funk Jr. manages to take his opponent down. They had tried to, in previous weeks and months, get Rotundo versus Funk off as a potential, process here. Doesn't exactly go the way they planned, but it's okay. Anyway, there's a bit of brawling between the two, and Funk hitting European uppercuts, and Rotundo hitting more traditionalized forearms. Some basic stuff there as we begin to run around, kind of walk around a little bit. Jake Roberts hits the modified, what we later become known as the DDT, and gets a win for his team. There is a interview with Mr. Crockett and ultimately Piper and Valentine. Valentine still your U.S. champion, and Slater, Dick Slater, and Slater, your television champion. Basically, they say Valentine says he should still be the best in the area. Slater talking about being in the House of Humperdinck. There is a continuation with the feud between Roddy Piper, Dick Slater, Greg Valentine, obviously, all building to Starrcade later in the year. 6 months out, it's a pretty big deal. Piper is caught with a gut-wrench suplex, gets a quick takeover there. Piper does the majority of selling in this short match clip, arena match clip, dimly lit, but well enough to see that Slater takes the majority of control early and ultimately leads to where he wants to be, and kind of getting things handled in that way. Ultimately, some kicks and getting things together, and then again, you kind of come to see some hard shots, stuff between the middle, and Piper eventually does take Slater back into the ring, kicks him in the head. Certainly brawls and basic things, from that perspective. Slater and Valentine basically saying that they should both be champions long term, the House of Humperdinck still in control, and that, in fact, Valentine still trying to maintain that he's going to beat Ric Flair into oblivion at some point. Sergeant Slaughter gets his hat back. Slaughter and Kernoodle still there. Basically, the inference over the next several weeks is that, in fact, Slaughter and Kernoodle were betrayed by Jim Nelson. Jim Nelson, of course, one of the privates of Sergeant Slaughter. That angle went through the majority of 1983, and is a pretty big deal. Slaughter says that they will soon be the tag team champions. They eventually do steal the belts in the coming weeks, but I don't believe technically that's happened quite yet. But Slaughter does gain his hat back, and that is a pretty cool deal there. Slaughter and Kernoodle, though, did then go into the ring as former tag team champions and as a tandem here. They are, in fact, facing off against Mike Davis and former Slaughter alumni and ally Jim Nelson. Of course, Slaughter and Kernoodle go at it. Nelson and Kernoodle do battle here, and ultimately it is a bit of a brawl. Kernoodle, who's known to do most of his best work in the Carolinas area. He's kind of fading out a little bit here in 1983, ever so slightly. Slaughter still a major force, but he leaves later in the year, so he's not here too much longer. Swinging neckbreaker on Mike Davis, and Davis shakes his head off. Doesn't look to be in the best of situations there, and a relatively simple cutoff, and Slaughter is in pretty simplistic control, and then we see the gut wrench almost into a gut breaker into a stun gun style maneuver. It is, for the most part, Mike Davis that takes the majority of punishment in this one. Sergeant Slaughter comes up with a power slam and continues to be dominant, and shows why his team are the former tag team champions. Modified Boston Crab also in there. Kabuki is, according to Gary Hart, under challenged. Hart basically saying that he is dissatisfied with the level of competition Kabuki is maintaining. Begins to start to tease over the next several weeks the debut of also a man known as the Magic Dragon. So Gary Hart, a pretty big deal here in the area at the time. We then see a good bit of run there, and it's Kabuki finally faces off against Keith Larson. Kabuki in a more traditionalized match. Larson had been a big deal here in 1982, returning a bit more regularly in the spring and into the summer of 1983. Kabuki with a bunch of martial arts stuff, painting the face green, obviously a squash match, and there is a point at which during the interview that Gary Hart says that there's only one man that Kabuki won't face, but that it's none of the announcer's business. They do a little bit of standing and brawling by Kabuki and Larson, perhaps too much for the trouble, and again, Gary Hart very happy with things. Previously in the show that I didn't mention is that the tag team champions Youngblood and Steamboat do manage to brawl a bit with their former adversaries Slaughter and Cornoodle, and that goes pretty well along there. We go to the next in the series of things, and ultimately manage to run as it relates to there, and Steamboat and Youngblood in a squash match. They're against Masafuchi and Ken Timms. The match is relatively called a squash because the champions are in control predominantly. Fuji does become a major force in Japan, but that comes a bit later. I would say that it's primarily Steamboat who stays in there with Fuji. A bit more of the martial arts style stuff. Youngblood manages a leg drop, among other things. Youngblood tries to keep things going his way. Steamboat and Youngblood do manage a double body slam. They are willing to challenge any team, and once they win the match, make that clear, whether it's Slaughter and Cornoodle in rematches, who, by the way, are asking for a cage rematch as they have had before, or teams like the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, and that goes forward as well. We will be back with more right after this.